about AI and ethics, right? After Google reportedly put an engineer on administrative leave after he said a chatbot he was working on was sentient, thinking and reasoning like a real person. Engineer Blake Lemoine published transcripts between himself and the company's chatbot system called Lambda. In an interview with the Washington Post about his interactions with the bot, this engineer said, quote, "If I didn't know exactly what it was, I think it was a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid that happens to know physics." They had a number of conversations, and in one of them, the engineer asked the system what it wants people to know about it. It replied, "I want everyone to understand that I am, in fact, a person. The nature of my consciousness is that I am aware of my existence. I desire to learn more about the world, and I feel happy or sad at times." Google says its technology does not have consciousness. In a statement to the Post, it said in part, quote, "Our team has reviewed Blake's concerns and have informed him that the evidence does not support his claims." Jake Ward joins me now. So, Jake, this is super interesting because Google announced it was working on this bot last year to try to make more natural conversations with AI assistants. I know you know this topic so well, so I'm glad to have you on for this. Tell me what you see in Lemoine's claims here, what your takeaway is, if you will, because I think to some people, it sounds like something that a movie could be made out of.
Absolutely, Hallie. I mean, this is certainly the beginning of many movies we've seen, and
right.
None of them end very well, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we all take away from this kind of thing. But here's an important thing to understand, right? Blake Lemoine, a 7-year Google employee, somebody who'd worked on AI and predictive search and all sorts of things, even he, with his technical expertise, was in fact convinced, and I think the proper word here is probably fooled, into thinking of this as an actually sentient, living robot brain that was having a real-life conversation with him in the way that you and I are having a conversation right now. Here's the thing, and I'll tell you right now, I've spent about 10 years writing a book on this topic, and I've spoken to AI people all over the world, and they basically cannot agree on almost anything. But what they all seem to be agreeing on in the last few days is that this thing is not sentient. What it does is it does an incredible impersonation of language by basically picking up the patterns in questions like Lemoine was asking it, and then regurgitating the patterns that it has seen in millions of other similar kinds of conversations and other pieces of language data. So basically what it is an extraordinary mimic. And in this case, even this 7-year Google experienced engineer was fooled by that and decided to take that thing public.
What does Google say about Lambda here? Because they're saying that Lemoine violated confidentiality, confidentiality policies, et cetera.
That's absolutely right. I mean, they are very sensitive about this. They do not want him going public with this. They described what he was looking at as an internal demo for research purposes only. And they, in fact, have in the past, in January, published an academic paper that basically said lots of people are going to be fooled by this kind of thing. We need to be watching out for the possibility that people could use it to impersonate certain types of people and, might be used for misinformation. They seem very open to the idea that this thing might sow confusion as it has in one of their own people. But they're definitely coming down on Lemoine in this case because he seems to have violated confidentiality, which, as you know, is the bread and butter of big tech.
You talk, as you say, you talk to so many experts. You've literally written a book on this. Where is the industry on the possibility of reaching sentience and how far we have to go before AI really can not just mimic, human language and thoughts and patterns, but I don't know, I feel weird even saying this, but feel it? I don't know. When do we get to the point where AI crosses the Rubicon and becomes this thing that is science fiction?
Well, there are all of these big thinkers who talk about things like the singularity, this idea that we're going to get to a place where our robot brain is more sophisticated than our own. But what I chose to write my book, The Loop, about was the idea that basically in the short term, we're going to hit these markers, and we are hitting one right now, where AI is going to do such a good impersonation of that kind of sentience that we're going to be tempted to hand it all kinds of responsibilities. Way back in the 1960s, you have people doing early experiments with chatbots, and even then, the same kind of stuff that went on with Lemoine was going on at that point. People thought, this thing knows me and it really understands my inner thoughts. We, it turns out, are deeply vulnerable and gullible when it comes to speaking with automated systems, and that's why we're handing off all sorts of things to it, I would argue, long before we're ready to do so, Hallie.
Jake Ward, could talk to you for 35 more minutes, but we'll save it for the next show. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Appreciate it.